And welcome back to American Agenda. I'm Allison Maloney, along with Sid Rosenberg, in for Bob Sellers. So nice to have you here today.
Nice to be here today. This has been fun.
It's been great on this Thanksgiving Eve. Something else that's really going on right now that we're talking about is this hearing that's happening in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. I think we have some live shots of that to take what's going on. The Trump legal team there meeting with some Republican lawmakers, and they're basically examining accusations of election impropriety.
They just found, I guess, the Trump team tweeting moments ago, 600,000 votes that went to Joe Biden, 3,200 that went to Donald Trump, which stinks of impropriety. Rudy Giuliani is there. Ellis is there. The president was supposed to be there. He did not make it here, Ali.
Right to a live shot. Donald Trump is actually speaking right now. Let's listen in.
Up to the ceiling. They're all over. They were treated horribly all over this, all of these swing states. I mean, virtually all of the swing states. And many other things were happening that were horrible, just horrible. But the poll watchers weren't allowed to watch. They were, in many cases, whisked out of the room, not only into pens that were 20, 30, 40, 60, 100 feet away, where you couldn't even see. They were using binoculars. People are reporting that they had to use binoculars, and that didn't work. If you were a Republican poll watcher, you were treated like a dog. And the Democrats had no problem, but they were rough. They were literally pushed out, and it was rough tactics. This is what happened here. This is not the United States of America, what happened, and I think everybody knows that. That's why you're there, and that's why you're so vehement about it. We have many cases of people walking in. A woman, an elderly woman, walks in looking forward to voting November 3rd and says, "Oh, good, where would I go about voting? I'm sorry, you've already voted. Your ballot is in." I said, "No, I didn't vote. I didn't vote." "No, your ballot is in. You've already voted." In all cases for Biden, by the way. She said, no, I want to vote." "Nope, your ballot is in." And then they give her a provisional ballot to sign, which goes nowhere. It's a disgrace that this is happening to our country. We won this election by a lot. We got 74 million votes. And if you would have said 74 million votes the day before the election, every single professional in the business would have said there's no way of beating that. We got 11 million votes more than we had 4 years before in 2016. And we got many votes more than Ronald Reagan had when he won 49 states. And nobody would have said we even had a chance of losing. And all you had to do is take a look at the numbers at 10 o'clock in the evening when everybody thought the election was virtually over. And then very weird things happened. But they're not weird to professionals, and they're not weird to Dominion and other people that operate machines, and they're not weird to the people that handle the ballots, where they were flooding the market. People were getting 2 and 3 and 4 ballots in their home. People that were dead were signing up for ballots. Not only were they coming in and putting in a ballot, but dead people were requesting ballots, and they were dead for years, and they were requesting ballots. And the whole world is watching us. The whole world is watching the United States of America, and we can't let them get away with it. And we have judges that are afraid to make a decision. We have judges that don't want to do the same thing. A very good lawyer said, "Well, sir, I mean, that's a big statement for a judge to overthrow an election." I said, "Really? If he got hundreds of thousands of votes more than he was entitled to get through all of the things that I'm listening to right now, and you're just covering a few of them, we have hundreds and hundreds of affidavits of stories that are even worse than the stories I'm hearing. Why wouldn't they overturn an election? Certainly overturn it in your state, because we have other states that are just as bad. If you look at Michigan with Detroit, you look at the things that happened in Detroit, where you have a voter, but you have more votes than you have voters. You take a look at Detroit, Michigan. You have more votes than you have voters. And then you have 2 people that don't want to certify. They don't want to certify, and they're harassed violently, and they turned off the cameras during the harassment for 2 hours. And then they said, wow, and they were afraid, and they voted, and then they went back to sign, and they couldn't do it because they said, we can't do it because this is corrupt, This is horrible what's taking place. Think of it, more votes than you have voters. But that was the least of it. They have things that were as bad as that. And this is going on all over. We're doing very well in a lot of states. A lot of good things are happening in Georgia. We're getting little help from government, but a lot of good things are happening in Georgia, Wisconsin, in Michigan. They're seeing what happened in Detroit. And we sure are looking at what's happening in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia. What happened in Philadelphia, they keep the poll watchers not only in pens, but they keep them out of the building. And the only reason they got back into the building was they got a court order. And then the definition of back into the building was very far away where they couldn't see anything. And they talk about closed circuit television, except you couldn't see it because the picture was so unclear you didn't even know what they were doing. They could have been playing a baseball game. So it's a very sad thing for our country to have this. And they have to turn over the results. It would be easy for me to say, oh, let's worry about 4 years from now. No, this election was lost by the Democrats. They cheated. It was a fraudulent election. They flooded the market. They defrauded everybody on ballots. And I just want to thank everybody for being there. You're doing a tremendous service. This is a very important moment in the history of our country. And you're doing a tremendous service to our country. And don't worry about bravery, because the people that talk the most, they're not the ones you have to worry about. And these are all talkers. They intimidate. But these are not people that you're going to ultimately have to. They push you around. They pushed our poll workers out. Our poll watchers were pushed out of the building. Okay, some got back in, they were put in the pens. But these are not people. Don't be intimidated by these people. But they're bad people. They're horrible people. And they're people that don't love our country. So we don't have to worry about 4 years right now. We have to worry about what happened on November 3rd and previous to November 3rd. And by the way, after November 3rd, when people put votes in and they put them in illegally, they put them in after the polls closed. And one of our great Supreme Court justices made mention of that. And I can't imagine that any justice or anybody looking at it could be thrilled when they vote after the election is over. So I want to thank everybody very much for being there. I want to thank the state Senate, respected people, tremendous people, and you're doing a tremendous service for our country. And if something was done wrong, if this election was won fraudulently, and that's what happened, it was a fraud. And we're talking about, very importantly, many more ballots, many more votes than the number we need. In other words, if we needed 50,000 votes, we're not talking about we found 9 dead people that voted. Of course, there were many more than that, many numbers that nobody even believes. No, we're talking about numbers that are far in excess of the 50,000, far in excess of another state where we lost by 10,000. And they went absolutely wild because we got far more votes than they thought possible. And they've just stepped on the gas, and they got caught. Just like they got caught spying on my campaign, they got caught doing this. So I really appreciate it, and the country appreciates it, and we have to turn the election over because there's no doubt we have all the evidence, we have all the affidavits, we have everything. All we need is to have some judge listen to it properly without having a political opinion or having another kind of a problem, because we have everything. And by the way, the evidence is pouring in now as we speak. And I want to thank Rudy Giuliani for having the courage to do this, because there are other lawyers that backed down because they were being screamed at. Rudy is the greatest mayor in the history of New York, and there's a reason. He's got great courage, and he doesn't care. He wants to do what's right. And I told him the other day, Rudy, you were the greatest mayor in the history of New York, and you see what happened to New York without Rudy. You were the greatest mayor, but this is more important. What you're doing now is far more important than being a great mayor of the city of New York and being its greatest mayor by far. By the way, by far. This is going to be your crowning achievement because you're saving our country. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
I think what you've just heard guarantees that 100 years from now, that this is the most important public hearing ever held by this Senate committee. We turn now for questions. Representative.
And there it is. What a wild scene right there in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. The president calling in. He was supposed to be there today. He did cancel at the last minute, but as you heard, he called in there. And first of all, let's start with our network here, Newsmax. No one else will cover what you just heard.
Yep.
That I can promise you. So we gave you that live, and we were the only network to do that. I guess we're going to go live again to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. It turns out that the esteemed Mayor Rudy Giuliani is testifying right now.
Just one other thing. These people are very brave people. A lot of people aren't testifying. They're backed up by 50 more who are willing to testify. Obviously, we can't present all of them. I want you to know that all of them are backed up by numerous witnesses who say the same thing. But there are probably another 50 who are not willing to testify, including probably what would have been one of our best witnesses, because he's been threatened with the loss of his job and his children being thrown out of their private school.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Let's try our Zoom capabilities here. Senator Michelle Brooks calling in from northwestern Pennsylvania.
All right. We're just listening to Rudy Giuliani talk at this hearing. And he mentioned something that we've been talking about is that there are a lot of people who are willing to testify, but some are scared. He mentioned that there was a man who wanted to, but his job was threatened and his children were threatened to be thrown out of their school. So we keep hearing about these stories.
No, there are people that are scared, like you just said, and they should be, because there are crazy people out there that do crazy things. Pennsylvania, where Rudy Giuliani is once again testifying. Here's Mayor Rudy in Pennsylvania.
Of a lawsuit. Thank you.
This is Jenna Ellis, and the mayor has asked me to answer this question. So as far as the campaign is concerned, we have pending lawsuits here in Pennsylvania. That's going up to the Third Circuit. They've granted an expedited review. We also have pending litigation in Nevada. We also have recounts in Georgia and Wisconsin, and we also have a pending lawsuit in Michigan. So regarding the mail-in specifically, we are still looking at all of the other legal options. And we are also planning on filing additional litigation by the end of this week. I won't go into detail on that other than to say that this is asking for a judicial remedy to this. And also I'll invite the question from the panel as well in terms of a remedy. Part of what we are asking, or what we did ask initially, was to stop certification so that we could get to the bottom of this process. Clearly, you've heard sufficient evidence today that would lead any reasonable finder of fact to say that there's been sufficient evidence that you should stop that, you should not move forward with certification. What we would ask the judiciary in terms of remedy can be legislative as well under the Constitution. And I would direct your attention to Article 2, Section 1.2, which says that each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors. And so you, the legislature, without judicial oversight, can direct and take back that power. You have the opportunity as the legislature, and legislature in this context means the state legislature. So although there has been delegated authority to your Secretary of State and according to your law, at any time you can take back that power, and that is the provision. And the
all right, just listening to Jenna Ellis, who's a member of President Trump's legal team, and joining us now to weigh in on the significance of the hearing is Eric Cardall, the special counsel to the Amistad Project at the Thomas More Society. Eric, thanks for joining us today. What's happening, what some people have been saying, accusations there when it comes to election?
Well, it's really a momentous occasion because here we have state legislators and citizens working together for election integrity. And there's so many problems with this election, and we're reviewing the government data. And, there are double votes. There are people out of state voting in the states. There are residency violations. There are people who voted absentee and never had their vote counted. There are illegal votes counted. And they far exceed the margin in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona. So people have to stick with it. They're just huge problems, and we're finding them in the government data.
Eric, this isn't happening just in Pennsylvania. It's going on in other states. Listen, I want to get your reaction.
I'm 52 years old. I've been in politics my entire adult life. I was a White House political director. I've overseen a lot of campaigns. I have never seen the amount of voter irregularities and illegal voting as I saw in Clark County. And it represents a pattern in these other states as well. So I think what Newsmax should do is exactly what it's doing. Be governed by the facts. Don't let some philosophy or ideology overtake your journalism.
All right, want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, he's right, but the thing about what we've discovered by getting the government data in these states is that the government data shows the election officials' illegal performance. I mean, they were focused on violating election law during the election cycle, and they weren't doing their jobs. So you have tens of thousands of votes in each of these states that were illegally counted, and you have legal votes not counted. It's just shocking how poor the election officials were working. Now, some with the Zuckerberg money, you know, Mr. Zuckerberg put $350 million into local election officials' hands. You know, there's a question of was this all coordinated, and that evidence will come out. But for right now, I mean, these close margins, particularly in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Georgia, I mean, those elections, they should be thrown out because of the doubt created by election official illegalities. And so, you know, this election, I believe, is not decided because all these illegal votes, according to government data, have been counted. And according to government data, legal votes weren't counted. And so if the margin is less than the total of illegal votes counted and legal votes not counted, then it goes to the state legislature.
Eric, we do keep hearing about illegal, but how do we know that they are legal? We hear a lot about the evidence. What kind of evidence is there?
Well, like in Wisconsin, in the indefinitely confined category, the voters in Wisconsin don't have to attach a copy of photo ID to their absentee ballot application if they're indefinitely confined. And the Wisconsin Election Commission was pushing that as an exception to the photo ID. But the Wisconsin Supreme Court in April said, stop it. That's illegal. We have a photo ID requirement. But even after the Wisconsin Supreme Court said that, the Wisconsin Election Commission continued to undermine the photo ID requirement. And we did a social media investigation on indefinitely confined people and found about 43% of the 200,000 new people who registered indefinitely confined. So when you have maybe 90,000 people illegally avoiding the photo ID requirement and the margin is 20,000, those are illegal votes. They made a misrepresentation to the election officials based on the election officials leading them astray.